Well, sorry for cutting off the part 1 video so abruptly. One of the kitties jumped up in my lap. I meant to hit pause, hit stop instead. So, anyway, what I was about to say was that the religion in general, but the church I went to in particular, was very immersive. Like, it wasn't just a church that you went to on Sunday and then forgot about it for the rest of the week. You were expected to live this faith 24/7. There was no such thing as, getting saved, as other religions call it. You could achieve salvation, but it was a constant process of keeping it, keeping yourself saved. At any moment, you could backslide or even just become lukewarm, and you would no longer be going to heaven until you, repented, prayed through, as they call it, etc. So, I won't say it was exactly a constant fear, but it was a constant vigilance and a whole lot of guilt about even your thoughts, maybe, because, if your heart wasn't right, even if you weren't acting on these thoughts, just having the thoughts could cause you to lose your salvation. And the lifestyle was so strict that, that wasn't really easy to maintain. And I was, most of the time, a true believer. I was raised to believe that this was the only way to salvation. Like, even other Pentecostal sects didn't have true salvation according to the UPC and my pastor. So, you might wonder, if you haven't ever, lived the Pentecostal lifestyle, why anyone would even want to live that way, because the UPC in particular was really hard on females. You don't wear pants, you don't wear makeup, you don't wear jewelry other than a wedding ring, you don't cut your hair, you at least at the time, most what they call worldly events were discouraged, like ball games, movies. We were taught to be separate, and so that was not an easy lifestyle to maintain, although it was a little easier, I guess, if you were raised in it, because that's all you'd ever known. But particularly for an adolescent, it was difficult, because you're at that age where your peers, like at school, are very cruel and insensitive, and I had a lot of bullying, a lot of humiliation while I was in school. But, number one, even if I had really wanted to leave while I was a minor, would have been really hard for me to. I can't imagine what my mom's reaction would have been, and then my uncle. You know, I lived in fear of him. So, but anyway, back to the point that I was getting to as to why the recidivism rate is so high, why people would choose to live this way, believing that this was the only way. It's for me, and I would say for other true believers, as I was a true believer, not now, but it's what you feel, what you experience when you're in a service, and the music, the singing is going strong, and people have their hands up in the air, praying out loud, people are speaking in tongues. If it gets really, really intense, people may be, running the aisles, dancing in the spirit, whatever. That wasn't something that occurred all the time, a lot of times at revival services and special services like that. But there was absolutely no denying that I felt something extremely real. I spoke in tongues. I fell out under the Spirit. I worship just as intensely as anyone, and the feeling that you have throughout your whole body is so intense and so real. That's what convinces you that this is the real deal. And it's what keeps people who have left years ago, it's what keeps in their mind that even though they're not there, and that it's still the only right way to heaven, the only right way to God. They live as I did after I left the first time. They just live with this constant fear of, what if I die tomorrow? I'm going to hell. I mean, I would have periodic nightmares about that from the time I left the first time, about 19 to mid-20s, when I went back for a while. Because you're absolutely convinced, because of all the things that you have felt and seen, the healings, the casting out of demons, all of this stuff, you're absolutely convinced because of the physical sensations that you feel, and mental also, that it has to be real. You wouldn't feel these things, you wouldn't see these things, you wouldn't experience these things, see other people experiencing these things. So, in my late 20s, I actually broke the brainwashing. Wasn't intentional. It was something I stumbled across. A friend of mine, I believe, had lent me a book on Eastern religions. And I read a section about chakras and activating the Kundalini. And when I read the description of the sensations, it hit me like a ton of bricks, because that was exactly what I had felt in the midst of, intense worship in church. The sensation that starts at the base of your spine and goes up your spine down your arms, up the back of your neck, produces goosebumps. And I was like, oh my God, there's an alternate explanation for this intense feeling that I felt in church. And to me, that was a huge epiphany. Just the fact that meant that just because I felt all these sensations didn't mean that this church and this religion was the one true way. It basically boiled down to the fact that the church is really, really good at producing a form of mass hysteria, basically through all of the intense music and all of the worshiping out loud, and all of that intensity would activate the Kundalini. And so from that point on, I no longer believed. And I'm really glad about that, because it got rid of the constant fear that I was living in. But it then left me, after having this, I guess 19, 20 years altogether of my life, feeling absolutely sure that I knew the right pathway to heaven, to basically having no beliefs. And there are times that I wish that I had some religious beliefs, because it might be a bit of a comfort to me when I'm having trauma in my life, that if I still had an absolute belief in a God that I could reach out to, maybe that would comfort me some. I also, I have no desire to go to a church of any kind. I've never been able to work up any interest or desire, because I went so much and I was so immersed. I feel like I already went enough for a lifetime, but there are people in this religion that I would never explain my epiphany to. My mother, for one. I feel like she is at peace through having her beliefs, and I would not want to destroy her belief system and potentially set her adrift. And, especially since she's in her 60s and, talks about death constantly, I definitely wouldn't want to. I like the fact that she will die being absolutely sure that she's going to a wonderful eternal life that is great for her. I just could not live that lifestyle. I just couldn't. And so that's why it's a relief to me overall to have broken the brainwashing. And, if I did know someone else, if I did have a different family member who was living like I was, completely distressed by the fact that they could not hack the lifestyle, and yet lived with this constant guilt and fear that they might go to hell tomorrow, I would share my epiphany with them and hope that it helped them also. So, I'll probably delve more into the subject later. Thanks for watching.